Well, you can do all those things and so much more. Just grab a seat in the chair or the floor. Sit back, relax, recline. While she drops another casual line. You're tuned into Casually Molly with Molly and Bergie.
Welcome back to the Casually Molly podcast. For those of you who are loyal casual listeners, I'm your host, Molly Ambergy. And if you haven't listened, welcome. We're happy to have you listening in your ears or watching us on YouTube. Thank you for casually subscribing. But enough about us. We interview comedians, entertainers, musicians, just anybody with an artistic influence. But I'm very excited to welcome, I say offer to everybody here, but to welcome our next guest. He's very funny. Give it up for comedian Don Jamieson, everyone. At Don Jamieson Official, the crowd goes wild. Don, how are you today?
I'm single. You can offer me to your crowd.
All right, done. Absolutely. You know his handle. Slide in those DMs. Casually sign in. I like it. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining us. How's your day been?
Oh man, it's really freezing cold here in Jersey. We had, because we have fake first spring, then we have second winter, and then we'll have real first spring, and then it's all over the place. And I live down by the beach, so when it gets cold down here, it gets brutal.
Oh my gosh. Oh my, when you hear beach, obviously people all the time are just like, oh my gosh, the sun, everything. So I'm sure it's beautiful in the summer, but I was telling who we talked about earlier, your friend Jim Florentine, who happened to be on this podcast, comedian, check out his YouTube special as well. I was telling him my mom is from Queens, New York. And so definitely in the Northeast, everything gets a little bit colder probably than maybe we would like, but you're surviving, you're here, and we're happy to have you.
Yeah, I'm in my nice cozy place, and I'm talking to you, and we're doing it casually.
Oh, I like it. Yes, we're doing. You're already in theme. This is going to be a great interview. I can't wait. I'm very happy to have you. Just because I did listen to some of your comedy, it's very good. You're very funny. Why don't you tell us a little bit about denim and laughter for those who maybe aren't aware of it?
Wow, right in with the plugs. I like you, Molly. Okay, let's. Well, first of all, I'm so old school that I put it out on vinyl.
Oh, that's album. Amazing! Oh my God, that looks great.
Yeah, I just figured I gotta. I still collect vinyl, so it's like I just want to put one of my comedy albums out on vinyl. I don't care if I only sell 3 of them and I have 500 in my house. I just so I can say I put out an album on vinyl. But of course, it's available, on digital downloads, which is where most people get it, and physical on CD. Jim Florentine and myself are both signed to a heavy metal label called Metal Blade Records. Mm-hmm. And it's so, we love the bands on Metal Blade, and that label's given us the opportunity to put our comedy albums out on that label that's had so many great bands. Like they're the first ones to have Metallica, Slayer, and they've been around 40 years. So, they were real supportive of like the physical product, and they get the vinyl thing. So, but if you go to Apple Music or wherever, I always try to make the track names at least funny, because I know people just cherry pick them. So if I can make the track names funny, then people will be more likely to download them. So, it's my newest album, and it's pretty good.
Well, first of all, I didn't realize it was on vinyl. I did listen to it on Spotify, but I do have a record player, so I'd be more than happy to buy a vinyl version of it. So I'll be the 4th customer. It'll be great. The other thing I wanted to ask is that now you do comedy, obviously, but did the interest in heavy metal come first, or the comedy? How did we kind of combine both of these worlds together?
Yeah, wow. Very early on in life, my first 2 albums were Kiss Destroyer and George Carlin, Occupation Fool. Mm-hmm. So to me, those worlds always fit together because, like, if you look at the cover of Kiss Destroyer, I mean, when you're 11, man, that's the coolest stuff. I don't know if we're allowed to curse, but it's the coolest.
You are. You're good. Yeah.
It's the coolest shit ever because you're 11 and there's rock stars and there's superheroes and they're comic book characters, and you put the record on. I didn't even care what it sounded like. It was just so cool. And of course, my parents hated it, so that made me like it even more, right?
Of course, yes.
And then the same with comedy. And, here I'm 11 years old listening to George Carlin, and I could, I had to put like the little earphone in on my tape, Radio Shack tape player, and put it, make sure that it was late at night when my parents were asleep. So to me, it was like both these worlds were kind of subversive and against what my parents would want. So those worlds always mixed for me.
Oh, I love it. I can relate because I was telling you earlier before we started recording, my brother was very much into heavy metal. So he probably knows the exact album cover that you're talking about. And then I did comedy. So we were definitely, not the disappointments, but we definitely went in a different track than probably that my mom maybe wanted us to. And then my sister was in the middle. She became a pharmacist. So it's, we balanced it out. So I can completely understand. I also looked at your website. You've got a lot of stuff I'll hit, but I loved the video you posted about the joke about she's only 17. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and why that song is so funny in the joke?
Well, yeah, I mean, for the people who know the band Winger, who are still around, by the way, 35 years, and they still have a career, although Beavis and Butthead took them down a few pegs. That's where probably a lot of people would remember Winger from, because that, the nerdy kid Stuart always wore the Winger shirt and they picked on Stuart. And it really did mess up their career. But, back in the heyday of MTV, they had a huge hit song called She's Only 17. And their singer, Kip Winger, is this great looking guy. And, all the girls loved him and stuff. And, that was the song. But nowadays, it's like people are so sensitive about, everything. And it's, and I say, I love the band Winger. If you got to have a hit song about being a pedophile, that's a crazy band right there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Kip Winger was the original R. Kelly. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. That's the punchline. I was like, I know there's something coming. I know, but it was so good. That's what and Jim too. It's like, you guys just have these great punchlines and it just makes me laugh so much. And then speaking of recording this album, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this the album that was recorded in a speakeasy in a secret location? Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you made a secret show? I'm so intrigued now.
Right, as if doing comedy just in general isn't a tough enough thing to do, and then the pressure of recording an album. Let's put it in an illegal club in Los Angeles and throw in the danger of possibly being raided by the police during the taping. And although I thought that would have been a good ending to the album, is just getting carried out by the LAPD. So.
Oh my God.
I like doing my comedy albums in different places, or even the comedy clubs I've done them in. They're very specific and weird in their own way. But I just thought, man, what a cool idea to do. The stuff I do, is sometimes I walk on the edge, and so I wanted to record in a place that sort of has an edgy feel to it, vibe to it, and it just worked out great. And it literally was an illegal club that we did it in, and I was so happy with the way it came out.
I was about to say, I was like, how did you, I guess this might be a secret and you probably can't share it on this podcast, but how do you get people to an undisclosed location like that? What was the marketing like, if you know anything about that, maybe?
Yeah, well, no, it's just you make a Facebook event and you just let everybody know, we're going to be in North Hollywood on this day, taping 2 shows, and the morning of we'll let you know where it is. That way, that they can't, put the address out there for everybody, and then we get shut down. So it was so cool. Smart. It was a cool event. It was maybe we did it in front of 50 people. You don't have to. You don't have to have 3,000 people for your comedy album, It was just a perfect setup, and the whole vibe was the speakeasy vibe, the velvet curtains on the walls, and, there was no windows, and, they had a full bar there and all that stuff, and, it was perfectly wired for sound, and, there's video of it up on my YouTube channel that people could check out, but it was a really cool event.
Oh, I love that. And there's something about like an intimate setting like that that even makes it more fun because you're recording your jokes and you know you're set, but live comedy, connecting with the audience like that and having them like that close to you is always the coolest. The other thing I'll mention too, I know this is your latest album. Were there other albums that maybe came before, and what was maybe the difference between those and now?
I think I'm a little better as a comic. I'm definitely not worse.
Okay,
so
that's a plus. That's a win for me. I like it. Okay.
I think of myself as like the AC/DC of comedians. Like I kind of play the same three notes, but I can play them in so many different ways. So this album's just three notes, but in a more current setting. This album definitely. Denim and Laughter is definitely, the theme is definitely much more about politically correct society and all that stuff. As opposed to the others had different kind of themes. But like I said, I did them in all. Like one of my albums I did in the comedy club down here at the shore where I live. And it's a BYOB club, which,
okay.
you never see, most clubs make their money on all the booze. But, at this club, people like wheel in giant coffin-sized coolers of beer and vodka and all this stuff, right? And like, I wanted to capture that spirit on the album. I always want to get the atmosphere of where I'm at. And there was a point in the taping where this woman had one of those big giant wine jugs on the table. And her and her husband like finished the whole thing off. And she went to laugh and she knocked it off the table and it clanged across the floor. And my editor's like, oh, don't worry, I could take that out. I go, don't you dare take that out. I want all that Jersey, bring your own, at the beach, everybody's drunk and tan in the room and having a great time. And so, you got to leave all that atmosphere in. Otherwise, I could be filming it anywhere,
Oh my God. I love that. And that's this thing, like I told you this when we were talking earlier, I was in theater. So having like those live moments like that almost makes the performance even more entertainable. You're like, oh, it's like me and this wine jug that just broke. But that's the enthusiasm that you want. And, speaking of Jersey, as you're talking about, I always ask comedians this, I have, obviously, from my family on my mom's side, I have a bias to the Northeast. But why did you decide to stay in the Northeast versus like doing LA or Chicago or even now apparently Texas? Like, why be on the Northeast coast area?
I guess LA didn't want me, but I really always wanted to make my career here on the East Coast because my family's all here. When I came up in comedy, I was very lucky. The Jersey comics that I came up with were all supportive dudes. It was like Jim Florentine and Rich Voss and Jim Norton and Bob Levy and all these great comics who are all still around and all are still in the Jersey, New York area. And like we all supported each other. We all helped each other's careers, like there wasn't that clique that you sometimes get like in New York City or LA where people kind of they stick to their own thing and we only like these three people and we'll only support these five comics. And if someone gets if we get something, we share it with each other, hey, I just got in this club. I'll get, let me get a couple on my bed. I'll get you in. So I just, that kind of, you don't get that a lot in show business. I mean, I'm barely in show business, but on the low rung that I'm on, that kind of you don't never give that up. When you could get that kind of support from the community you work in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's such a nice, like amazing answer to hear. It like makes me kind of have a little bit more faith in humanity. But speaking, that's a good thing. And you're not on the low rung. You're doing great. I wanted to ask you too, when was the moment, I know we kind of talked about how you combined both worlds with metal and comedy, but when were you like, hey, I want to try stand up? Like, was there a mic you went to, or were you just kind of thrown on a show, or did you I know you mentioned George Carlin earlier, but was there just a time where you're like, I need to start pursuing comedy. This is my moment. Let's do this.
Yeah, I was telling somebody this story the other day because yes, when I was younger, I was listening to Carlin and Pryor and Cheech and Chong, and then Dice, who's my comedy hero. But the truth is, the person who really got me to go on stage was I can't remember the guy's name, but I went with Jim Florentine. He was already doing comedy at the time. To this gig, and it was in a bar that was connected to a strip club, and the kid who was the MC went up there, and he bombed so hard for like 15 minutes, like he had a perfect zero. Not a sound from the audience. You couldn't even hear people breathing. It was so bad.
Oh, that sounds
And then
terrible.
I saw him walk off.
Oh my
It
God.
was the worst. And he walked off stage and he went up to the manager of the club, and I'm watching from across the other side of the room. And I see the club owner putting money in his hands, and he walked right next door and went to the strip club. And I'm like, I could be that bad and get paid. And I've never even tried it before. I could have gone up and done that. And I could be, getting paid in singles and be next door right now, getting a couch dance. But so that was the first thing that inspired me to do is somebody who sucked.
Oh my God, my stomach hurts because that is the best. Like, if that is like, that is the epitome of casually Molly, is that we're like, I'm going to casually do this and then walk next door to the strip club. That is the best answer. Normally people give, and I don't mean to rip anybody on our podcast, but normally you hear like, oh, I got inspired, and I always hear all this artsy shit, but that was so raw. It's so real. And I really, really appreciated that. But yeah, no, that's awesome. You talked about combining both worlds. I love this quote. And being a comedian on Metal Blade Records makes the whole package complete. I know you talked a little bit about the bands that are on it and you love the record label, but why do you personally feel like this record label is a great fit for you?
Well, I mean, when you have bands like Slayer and Cannibal Corpse and 6 Feet Under, like heavy death metal bands, I'm, feel pretty certain they're not going to censor any of my comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, you're on a heavy metal label. You're really going to tell me to tone it down a little bit. So, and Metal Blade was a label that still to this day shapes, my musical world. So I'm just so honored to have gotten to know and become friends with Brian Slagle, who's the head of the label, because that was a labor of his love. He loved hard rock and heavy metal so much. And he used to that story, he used to do fanzines, and then he did a compilation tape one time. And then next thing you know, one thing leads to another, and all his worlds collided. So, it's a similar, kind of story in that, I do love this kind of music. All of my albums, my packaging has to do with rock bands or metal bands. Doesn't mean you have to like hard rock or metal to like my comedy, but if you get the visual thing I'm doing, it's just, it's just something a little extra. Because again, I'm old school. I like the physical packaging that comes along with music or comedy. So it's just a right fit on every level, including that I go out and open for bands doing stand-up. So there's that connection too.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is what I kind of wanted to touch on. That is so interesting, just because I love that, again, that the worlds are combined. What is it like opening up for a band? Like, was there a favorite moment you had where you were opening up for a band? Is the energy the same or is it different? Are people expecting?
I know people right now are going, with that print on his wall behind his head, he can't be that hardcore into metal. But trust me, the whole room can't be, Judas Priest and Black Sabbath posters. But the crowds are, when I first started doing it, I just sort of took like the attitude that I did when I first started doing comedy, where, you would go like that gig I described to you, where you drive out to, 4 hours out to the middle of Pennsylvania to some bar somewhere. No one's paying attention. They got the TVs on. The mic barely works. And now you got to go up there and make something happen, So you would have to really come out and and boom, right, hit people right off the top and really try to, get people to focus and pay attention. And it's kind of that same way when I do a rock show. Is like, I got to bring that same energy that I did back in the bar gig days, where it's like, all right, these people didn't come for comedy, but I'm going to make them want to laugh, once I get up there. And I've over the years developed a whole support act for the headlining band, where it's only jokes about bands and musicians and music. So like if you come to see me in a nightclub, you're going to get all the stuff about my life, relationships, all the stuff we all talk about. And you'll get some of the rock stuff depending on how I could feel the crowd out a little bit, but maybe you'll get 5 minutes of it. If you come see me open for a band, you're going to get a 30-minute set of jokes about Winger or Alice Cooper or Black Sabbath or Ozzy or whatever. So I try to also keep it in that family so that people don't sort of go, wait, why? What? He got divorced? Who cares? Well, I want to, I want to see Twisted Sister. I don't care.
Right. No, that's really good. I was so interested in seeing that just because I see comedians open for bands all the time. And I always wonder what their thought process is, but you're totally right. Some of the jokes are centered to the different bands that are there. So that makes total sense. You also talked about being on the road. Was there are you on tour right now? Are there any shows that you have coming up that you want to share?
Not currently on the road with a rock tour, but I will have one. Usually in the summer I get on the tour bus with a band and go out there. So this summer, I will. Okay. So people could just keep their eyes open for that. Check my socials and stuff. Florentine and I have a show coming up in Nashville, April 8th and 9th. We love to work together. And we're playing this place called Wine Down in Nashville. It's just a little wine bar, has a cool little performance space. The woman who owns it, her husband plays in the Monkees. So they have a little bit of a music connection. They love comedy. And so I played there a bunch of times. It's a really fun place. Just ends up being a big party after the show and everyone hangs out. So winedownnashville.com. Come out and see Jim, Florentine, and myself, April 8th and 9th. And we love Nashville too, because it is Music City after all.
Oh, I love Nashville. I've seen a lot of great shows out there, but I actually saw that on Jim's Instagram. That's really awesome. I didn't realize it was in a wine bar, but that's going to be such a very, very cool setting. I also I'm very interested in seeing this, and I didn't have a chance to listen to it. I'll listen to it after this, but terrorizing telemarketers. What was that about? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this has been going on for years. Again, Jim, Florentine, and myself have been torturing telemarketers for 6 albums now. So, and soon to be a 7th. We are currently recording number 7 together. 2 middle-aged men making prank calls for a living. God bless America, and. It's again, it always goes back to the roots. It's the days of driving to the tip of Connecticut or all the way up into Maine, and you're for $75, and you're in the car, and you just want to have funny stories to tell each other. So, we mess around with telemarketers and then tell each other the funny stories in the car, and then, after like a year, the light bulb finally goes on, and we're like, maybe we should record some of these, and we did, and like I said, we've done six volumes of terrorizing telemarketers, and that's where the character from Crank Anchors, Special Ed, got started on our CDs. So we've been doing those for a long time, and we figured, what the heck, during the pandemic, let's pump another one out and mess with some more telemarketers. They're relentless; they never end.
Oh my God. Now I just saw the title of it in the flames, and I was just like, that's how I feel about telemarketers. So I think that's a really good idea. Like, I'm so happy now on my cell phone, it'll have that spam risk and I can try to get it out. But I still my parents are older and they still have that landline. So it just makes me think about that. That's amazing. What a really cool concept. The other thing I'll ask you too is, were you a host of a heavy metal show? Why don't you tell us, or are you still the host of the heavy metal show? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Jim Florentine, myself, and Eddie Trunk hosted a show called That Metal Show on VH1 Classic for
Thank you.
14 seasons.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's the other big place in my life where music and comedy, rock and comedy, combined again in my world. And that was such a amazing show to do because obviously Jim and I got to be the smart asses that we are. And Eddie's a very well respected radio personality and TV music personality, and he was sort of like the straight man of the bunch, although he's very funny too. But basically it was a show where we interviewed all our heavy metal idols from our whole life, from our childhood up, and amazing to this day that most of them are now friends, which is usually which is how I end up going out on the road with them and stuff. They love bringing comedians on the road because I'm not another band. They don't need 4 more bunks on the bus. They need 1. I have no equipment. I just put my dick jokes in my pocket and off I go. There's no drama. There's not 4 guys with drama on the bus. It's just me. I'm really easygoing. So, all those friendships have led to so many cool things in my life.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I was like, I wanted to make sure that I prefaced it so that way you could talk about it. But what was it like meeting these people that you grew up listening to and watching? Like, I mean, I know you said you created a friendship, but what was that feeling just knowing like, oh, cool, I get to sit with this person? Like, are these people, was there any anticipation? Were you nervous? Were you just excited? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, excited. I mean, I've never been like a starstruck person, but I still pinch myself sometimes, to think like Dave Mustaine from Megadeth played on one of my comedy albums. It's like, that's incredible, to one day come out of my dressing room and Bill Ward, the drummer from Black Sabbath, is standing in the hallway and he looks at me and he's like, "Hello, Don, how are you?" And I'm like, how does Bill Ward even know who I am? Why would I ever be on his radar for any reason? He's one of the 4 guys who created heavy metal. He's a legend. I'm a goofball from New Jersey. Like, how does he know me? But it turned out, Bill loved the show, and all the rockers embraced the show, and we just had so much fun with it. So was always aware of who they were, but I never let it get to me because I'm thinking like, well, if I can't sit and interview Alice Cooper for 30 minutes, then this isn't the right TV show for me.
I love it. That is just really cool that I didn't even understand. I've seen, you guys interview and stuff, but I didn't realize. I was like, oh, that totally makes sense that you're like, oh, wow, this is somebody that I look up to and admire. Was there maybe, like I was about to say, sometimes when you're recording or something, did there any time something went wrong or you were like, I got to pick up the pieces and make sure everything goes smoothly? Like I was about to say, how do you handle conflict or when something happens maybe during a show or on film that maybe wasn't supposed to? Do you have a story about that?
We'll leave it to the editors. The good thing was we as much as we were professional, this was not, you weren't producing Game of Thrones, this wasn't, it was like, if we messed something up, we usually left it in, because it was real, we always, like sometimes we do our pick of the week and I would always get, I collect vinyl. So I always bring a piece of vinyl with me. And sometimes when I held it up, it would be upside down by accident. And then most TV shows would go, okay, cut, and we'll do that one again, and we'll turn it to right side up. But after a while, it was just like, who cares? It's funny. It's a real moment. And so we didn't really, do a lot of second takes. And most of the guests were just super cool. The only guy that was, a little crazy was Marilyn Manson came on, and he was enjoying some absinthe at 11 a.m. in the morning, as we all do,
Right. That's what I did today. What are you talking about?
Nothing like a little, mild drink like absinthe to get the day started. And he was, I distinctly remember a lot of pedophile and AIDS jokes throughout the taping that I tell you, our editor should have got an Emmy for that show because I don't know how they cut around all that stuff, but they did a good job with it and made it look flawless.
Oh, they definitely did. That's why I was like, it just looks so effortless for you guys, which is obviously the point. And it looks so fun to watch. Like, you guys had great chemistry. So props to you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And then one question too. So I know we mentioned a lot of heavy metal bands on this podcast. Is there one specifically that's your favorite? Or do you just kind of have an aurora or a bunch of them that are your top favorites?
Yeah, no, I mean, Alice Cooper, to me he's one of the greatest showmen of all time. But by the way, I just saw him. He's still playing. I just saw him again Wednesday night. He's 74 years old, and he's still in his prime. I mean, he still puts on this incredible stage show that blows anybody out of the water. I mean, other than Kiss, he has the most theatrical show with different characters coming in and out on stage. And, he gets beheaded by a guillotine and he's put in a straitjacket. And I mean, there's so much crazy stuff going on during the show. It's like a heavy metal Broadway play in so many ways. But he is always just an amazing storyteller. And just one of the nicest guys. Like the Alice on stage is the villain, and then the Alice off stage is a guy that he's another one who's like, when he sees me, he's like, Don knows everything about me. Ask Don if you want to know anything. And just that that he knows who I am is like ridiculous. Always came to the tapings by himself, no publicist, no handlers, no nothing. Like I said, he's always gracious enough to invite me to his shows when he plays, and I know his family and I know his band and everything, and so that's those kind of things. Like I do, in the moment, we're just friends talking casually, but I do, I'm secretly pinching myself the whole time. Because again, just such a nice, warm guy who's done it all in show business and zero ego.
See, and that's what I've actually listened to a lot of people, even if I'm not familiar with the music itself. I've listened to a lot of interviews with heavy metal bands, and for the production and the production value that they put on, all of these men are so humble and there's no ego. It is like one of the most touching, amazing things. So I can completely relate to what you're talking about. So that is in the sense of that, seeing that humble and that, that kindness. So thank you for sharing that as well too. What I will to ask you, we always say this at the end of our episode. You've been talking about comedy and how you've been pursuing it. What casual advice would you maybe either give to an up and coming comedian? Because a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in comedy or have an interest in it, or maybe advice you would have given yourself starting out that now? Something that's very current that I would tell, young comics is don't do comedy in front of Will Smith. It'll come out this week, so it'll be time relevant.
Yeah.
Episode.
I'm gonna tell you what I tell young comics who ask me for advice, and this is how I preface it. I go, I know you're gonna think that I'm blowing you off by giving you these 3 pieces of advice, but trust me on this. Here they are. Here you can work in this business forever. I am not a household name by any means, and I've done lots and lots of great stuff in my career, but I'm not a household name. I don't have FU money. But if you follow these 3 things, you can work in this business forever, okay? Number 1, be nice. When you go to play a gig somewhere, just be nice to people. That's all. Very basic, right? Number 2, do your time. Don't go 15 minutes over. Don't go 15 minutes under. Don't go 2 minutes over. Don't go 2 minutes under. Do your time professionally. And number 3, don't steal material. And those things seem so easy to do. Like people go, if that's all it takes, I can, because I'm not giving anyone direction on material, because we all do our own thing. My point of view is going to be different than your point of view, is going to be different from Molly's point of view, you know, because we're all going to talk about the same 6 things anyway. It just depends on which direction you come from. But I don't even get into that with comics, because you got to find your own point of view when you do comedy. But you'd be amazed how few comics can do those 3 things.
Yes, I completely agree. Especially, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you would think it's just the easiest stuff can be the hardest sometimes. But that's a great breakdown. That was one of my favorite answers. I love it. Don, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like I learned a lot. I was very candid in saying I didn't know a lot about heavy metal beforehand, just the interviews I listened to, but now I felt like this was an education for me. So thank you so much. Did you want to plug your show with Jim one more time at the Wine Bar, and then maybe where we can find you on your website and social media to learn all about Don Jamieson?
Yes, and thank you for the nice words. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun, and thank you to Key as well for getting me in the right position for this. And Jim Florentine and myself will be in Nashville, Tennessee, just outside of downtown at Wine Down Nashville. Like I said, great little wine spot, and with a performance area. It's a lot of fun. Please come down, winedownnashville.com. And then, Facebook and Instagram. I'm at Don Jamieson Official, so come find me there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you again to anybody listening and watching for tuning in. Just make sure that you casually subscribe to at the Casually Molly podcast. You can also follow my personal page at Molly Ambergy. That's Molly with an IE, and then it'll pop up for you. And then also click that subscribe button on YouTube. It's a newer page. We've been getting views. And thank you again to everybody for killing it at the audio listens. Very happy about that. What I always say at the end of our episode after we do our replugs, Don, now that we're done casually recording, what are you going to casually do now with the rest of your night?
Oh, wouldn't you like to know?
What's the scoop? What are we doing?
I'm gonna. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna work on some material, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a few little punchlines written down that need a little polishing off. So we're going to go do that.
All right. Well, I'll leave you to it. Thanks again. And good luck with your shows. And if you're ever in St. Louis, just let me know.
Oh, for sure. Oh, cool. Thank you. I didn't know you were based out of St. Louis.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you for a great hang. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a good one.